Welcome to the Sunday, May 7th edition of the PFF Forecast. We've got more awards to talk about. We talked about rookie, offensive rookie, and defensive rookie of the year awards, and some season-long props for rookies last week. We're now going to the awards overall this week. We also got a little bit of deciphering what the Carolina Panthers are actually saying. Are they really thinking about sitting out Bryce Young for the start of the season? We'll discuss. It's going to be a great pod. And by the way, the Lakers won, so it's fantastic. Let's rock. All right. I should ask, I know that Arjun and I had a wonderful day yesterday, Brad, because the Lakers won. They covered. It was fantastic. But probably the bigger betting day yesterday was had by people who bet the Kentucky Derby. And a relative long shot one, I think it was Mage, right? 14-1, I believe was what that horse closed at and ended up winning. So I got to ask you, did you give away all of your good bets to your dad? What happened there?
I hopped on Mage at the last second, but just to cover all the other losing bets I had. So that's pretty funny. Like I literally put $300 worth of bets in, and I put $20 on 15-1 on Mage, maybe 5 minutes before post. I'll shout out a couple sharp people like Drew Dinzik at Whale Capper. Anyway, a couple sharp people out there. We're talking Mage, so thank you to those people.
Yeah, I was at a wedding, and so we bet on it while we were waiting for the wedding to start. And I used to kind of follow horse racing somewhat closely. Like one of the first machine learning models I built was to like try and predict horse racing outcomes. And it's actually a really good sport to try and do that in. There's a really famous book. I think actually he wrote a book, Bill Benter, who came up with a phenomenal model, really one of the first, I think, true machine learning models to try and win at gambling and did so in horse racing. But I had none of that. So I'm literally just pulling, whatever out of my whatever. And, but I should have asked, my girlfriend's dad follows it super closely. And apparently he was all over Mage. And this is like the 1 year I decided not to hit him up. So I did not bet on him. But the Lakers thankfully made up for it. Arjun, I assume because you don't like golf, you don't like horse racing. So I won't even ask you, I guess.
I do like Bill Benter though. I've instead of watching the Derby yesterday, I read the Bloomberg article that they did on Bill Benter for like the 10th time, just because I think it's such a fantastic article and like just learning about everything he did in his career to get to where he is. I thought it was, he's probably like one of the more legendary gamblers there are out there. So yeah, as much I didn't watch the horses at all. I followed, who won stuff on Twitter, but I did read the Bill Benter article again.
And by the way, that article was resurfaced in our printing press Discord. All members of the podcast who are not yet a member of the printing press Discord, you should get involved, especially during the off season when the times to bet are really when news breaks, and we bet on everything: the Academy Awards, Kentucky Derby, Masters, the whole deal in there. So it's a lot of fun. But someone posted that article again. I recommend it as a great read. I was actually just thinking, is there a movie out there on that? We should write the script and try and make that, because it's a phenomenal story. Like he's like racing, but he's betting on horses in Asia, like trying to keep it so that no one realizes the way that he's betting, because it's a pari-mutuel sports book. It's not really a sports book. It's a pari-mutuel betting in Asia, and so he has to like stay undercover until they like figure out what he's doing. It's a phenomenal story. So yeah, do you guys know if there's like a documentary or anything out there on it? I don't think so.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah. Anyways, go check that out. Let's get to the first topic of conversation here, which is a little bit on the Panthers. So the Panthers obviously took Bryce Young, number 1 overall. And there's a story about out on Pro Football Talk. It says Panthers have no timeline for playing Bryce Young. There's a presumption that the Panthers quarterback will start right away. That presumption may not become the reality. Earlier this week, Panthers GM Scott Fitter explained the process for deciding when to put Young on the field. And, quote, "We're going to rely on our coaches to decide when to play him." So this sounds like a lot of of early off-season baloney. But I kind of want to figure out whether we think there's any smoke to this fire, and if there's anything that we can glean from this that might help us bet. So I'll start with you, Brad. What did you make of this?
So look, when the last time Andy Dalton was on a team where a team took a quarterback very high, was the Chicago Bears. He did play. He was QB1, an infamous graphic from their Twitter account that it still goes viral every once in a while. So that was legitimate. I think with Bryce, he's a pro-ready guy. He's played high-level Alabama quarterback for a while. Carolina doesn't really have much to lose at this point. But I guess I will, and I'll say this too. Carolina said they weren't sure who they wanted at number one. I think that was bogus for about the last month of the process. They said that, it came out of the wire, all these things. There were different, perspectives in the building and all that. But long answer short, I think that's kind of gamesmanship. I'd be surprised if Young is not starting in week one.
Yeah, no, I agree with Brad. And, you don't trade up to number one if you're not going to like think this guy is a pro ready starter. And like, even if he is someone that has like unlimited upside, like even if they took Anthony Richardson at number one, you'd still think they traded up all the way to number one to draft him and start him immediately. So we could hear reports of, what Trevor Lawrence kind of went through his rookie year where like he was taking half the snaps with Gardner Minshew. But I don't think like, I don't think Frank Reich is like that bad or that dumb in terms of like comparing him to Urban Meyer. And I do think like, especially for Reich and his entire offensive coaching staff, they do want to see what they have in Young, and you probably want to give him the most reps if possible. So I would expect Young to start week one. I think it is just a lot of coach speaking, saying, oh yeah, Young isn't just going to be given an opportunity. And if you look at like some of Dalton's stats and like PFF grades, like he did play pretty well last year. So I wouldn't be surprised if they thought he could be a viable guy to start week one. But I do think at the end of the day, it will be Bryce Young.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think this is both things can be true. So this is both coach speak, and I think there's a real shot that Andy Dalton plays. And the reason is exactly what you said just there, Arjun, which is that Andy Dalton was a top 10 graded quarterback last year. And you look at him play, and I've had to do this for many years, and you don't see it, right? It's like he makes inopportune plays that are just historically terrible. And those are the ones that you see on the highlights. But he is super consistent. He's super accurate, and that stuff shows up. So I could see them rolling with Andy Dalton. I really do think this is more cover for like, don't freak out if he throws a few interceptions in camp or whatever. But I do think it's interesting because we talked about the season totals for Bryce Young and CJ Stroud last year. Regular season passing touchdowns under 22.5, -120, over 22.5, -110. And passing yards was 37, is now 3750.5, over +100, under is -130. And I think this lends some credence to the unders that Andy Dalton, is it fair to say he's the best backup in the league? I mean, well,
not sure list.
Sam Darnold, right?
Well, Sam Darnold's a starter, so
yeah. Thank you. But so it's interesting. I think the one thing that I would say here is there's probably going to be some sort of ownership, decision here around Bryce Young. And I would say that they probably want to see the guy that they traded all that capital for play pretty quickly. But do you guys see, I mean, the season win total 7.5, like, is there an angle that you might play with any of these bets right now?
I still am not buying Carolina. I didn't love their draft. I think Mingo is a solid receiver out of Ole Miss, but I don't think he's some like dynamic difference making top 40 pick. The edge rusher, DJ Johnson out of Oregon, is fine, but 80th overall, 24-year-old edge rusher, I think it's like an above average player. I'm selling Carolina. People think that a 33-year-old Adam Thielen, an often injured DJ Chark, and Mingo is a good receiving core. I think it's one of the worst in the NFL by a comfortable margin. Austin Corbett, the right guard, is probably not going to start the year. That's why they took Chandler Savala in the 4th round, a good prospect, but again, a rookie. So anyway, long answer short, the defense is pretty good. The division stinks. The NFC stinks, but there's just, in my opinion, way too much buzz about this team being like a playoff contender that I just don't really see.
Yeah, I'm with you, Brad. I think the coaching staff is amazing. Like they did put together a great coaching staff. across all phases. I think they have some great leaders in the locker room, taking like a young team that could, coach them up. But yeah, I think there is a little bit of overhype there. The receivers, again, like before free agency, I mean, this receiving core was really, really bad. We're talking like Laviska Shenault and Terrace Marshall being the wide receiver 1 and 2. Now, I think, Thielen and Chark are both upgrades in that sense. But again, it's 33-year-old Thielen, and DJ Chark didn't even play a full season last year. Can't really count on him to play a full season. And then, Jonathan Mingo, I think to me, Mingo was kind of overdrafted based on him being one of the few big receivers in this draft class. Like, this was a pretty small and light draft class in terms of height and weight, and Mingo being like 6'2", 200 plus pounds. Like, teams who have a prototype at receiver are going to try to get guys that fit that prototype, and Mingo is one of those guys that I feel kind of fits what Frank Reich and Fitterer look for. If you look what Seattle's done in their drafts and what Reich looked for in Indianapolis. So yeah, it's an okay offense. I mean, Miles Sanders, I don't know. I don't even know if he's an upgrade over Deontay Foreman, because Foreman played really well down the stretch last year. It's a solid offensive line, but again, like it's a lot of projection on Bryce Young being a at least league average rookie quarterback coming in. And you have to assume that this coaching staff can help elevate some of the lesser talent that they have, on parts of the offensive defense.
I think analog from a coaching perspective would be what Jacksonville had last year, which is they went from Urban Meyer to Doug Peterson's a huge, from bad to really good. I think the same is here. Like, I think Matt Rule, all of the data out there would suggest wasn't fantastic. Frank Reich, I made the argument as a top tier coach in the league. I think based on from a decision making standpoint, maybe not from a quarterback selection standpoint, but from an offensive standpoint, certainly. The problem is that if you look at this, and I'm looking just at it on PFF.com, which you can go look at the lineups on both sides, right? The PFF Plus subscription, and you look at the PFF grades across the board, and it's a smattering of mid-60s. Like, that's what it is. And at receiver, on the offensive line, on defense, like they had, I think they have one slated starter that had a better than 70 PFF grade. 0 of them on, actually only one on the offense, and that's Miles Sanders. So, I like not a lot to be excited about there. I kind of lean under, as much as I like Frank Reich, but I don't think I'm allocating any capital at this moment. Okay, let's get to some awards here. So these odds are on DraftKings.com, DraftKings Sportsbook. That's where we're looking at them. You can also find them on the app, certainly. And I'm sure that you can find them in other places. We'll use the lines from DraftKings. Before we get to those, reminder to go to PFF.com and the PFF app and get yourself a PFF Plus subscription. You can get 20% off the promo code FORECAST, FORECAST. That will give you all the great premium content, all the fantasy tools, some new ones that are coming soon that you're going to be really excited about. If you liked the mock draft simulator, that is refreshed for 2024 in a premium fashion. And there is rumor out there that there's another trinket that Timo is working on to feed the people with here later this offseason. So get yourself a subscription and be ready for the upcoming year. Okay, let's start with just the biggest award out there, obviously, which is MVP. I'll go ahead and give you guys a sense of the favorites here, and then we'll start with Brad. So Mahomes, the favorite, 650. Joe Burrow is 7-1. Josh Allen plus 750. Hurts, Herbert, both 10-1. Lamar is 15-1. Fields and Trevor Lawrence, along with Aaron Rodgers, that's a tremendous group, is 16-1. Tua 18-1. Dak 20-1. And then you go to Deshaun Watson. So I'll stop there. Let's start with you, Brad. What do you make of the list here?
Yeah, I think I like Dakota Prescott here. Dakota Rain Prescott, Dallas Cowboys quarterback, missed 5 games last year. So I think you also kind of get cooked in a little bit of, such a substantial improvement from a statistical standpoint. The win-loss column was obviously solid for Dallas regardless last year. They are going to lean on their defense, but I think it was almost underrated how poor their receiving options were last year beyond CeeDee Lamb. I mean, a 5-year-old T.Y. Hilton gets signed in like week 14, and he was the second best receiver they had for stretches of games. Michael Gallup finally gets fully healthy now. I think that will help. You obviously trade for Brandon Cooks. You draft Luke Schumacher in the second round to add to a decent collection of tight ends. I just think he could have a year where they win the NFC East potentially, they win the NFC potentially. We've seen him put up, 5,000 plus passing yards in a season, and his interceptions last year, a lot of them were on third downs, kind of like arm punts and tipped passes, and just a lot of kind of fluky interceptions in his game last year. I think you clean that up, and instead you have more of a refined, clean, 4,500. 35 to 40 and 10 picks, and they win 13 games, or maybe the 1 seed in the NFC. I think it's a good bet for him at 20 to 1.
Arjun, what you thinking?
Yeah, I gotta go with Trevor Lawrence at 16 to 1. I'm really all in on the Jags this year. Already have a sizable bet on their division, like at -140, and I think this is just Trevor Lawrence's year. You look at their offense; they've really kept the exact same guys. Lost Jawan Taylor, but Lawrence is again one of the best in the NFL and not letting pressures turn into sacks. You can find that on the premium stats on PFF. They replaced Marvin Jones with Calvin Ridley, so you get an upgrade at the receiver position. And Lawrence gets another year in Doug Peterson's offense in a scheme. Both, coach and quarterback become more acclimated with each other. And the Jags were one of the 8 teams to have a positive pass rate over, or one of the 9 teams to have a positive pass rate over expected. So Doug Peterson is going to be throwing often, he's going to be throwing early. And I think because playing in a bad division, Lawrence will probably finish with a pretty good record at something like 10-7 or even like 11-6 is not out of the question, which is good enough to win MVP. And I think the Jaguars defense isn't that great. I think there could be a lot more shootouts than people anticipate. They are playing a first place schedule because they won the AFC South last year. So I think because of the combination of having a lot of volume, playing in with Peterson, having a great receiving core to throw to, a rejuvenated Calvin Ridley, they upgraded the offensive line with, or I don't know if they upgraded, but they definitely invested in the offensive line with Anton Harrison. I think a lot of things are coming together for Trevor Lawrence to have that huge third year breakout and kind of step into that quarterback that he was projected to be.
Yeah, it's a good call. So, I mean, the obvious answer here is Sam Darnold at 80 to 1 to be the MVP of the National Football League next year. And I say that partially kidding, but I will just let you know I'm going to put something down on that just to hedge my bets, because nothing would surprise me at this point. I do think it's interesting, some of the longer shots. Justin Jefferson is at 100 to 1. Tyreek Hill's at 100 to 1. Jamar Chase 100 to 1. You've got Christian McCaffrey also 100 to 1. Some super long shots. Not so big of a long shot, but one that I do like a little bit here is Kirk Cousins at 50 to 1. I think it's absolutely disrespectful that Cousins is 50 to 1, while like Geno Smith, Russell Wilson, Kenny freaking Pickett have better odds. Daniel Jones is also 50 to 1. But Cousins, here's the thing. He gets a second year playing in that offense. It was very good, very efficient offense last year. They added another receiving option through the draft in Jordan Addison. And he's got Justin Jefferson, who's going to go out there and be amazing. Now, I could see, obviously, if he has a huge year and Justin Jefferson does, it takes away from Cousins. But I think the path to winning that division is right there. The NFC stinks. So I do like that one as a big long shot. And then I'll give you, I think both of the ones that you guys mentioned make a ton of sense. So I'll just throw this other one in there. Aaron Rodgers at 16 to 1. The narrative that I will kind of keep writing here is I think he was pretty banged up last year, played through it, and the supporting cast was a complete abomination. And he goes from that to being healthy, to having a much better team. I think the path to winning that division is right there for them, as much as it will definitely be a, having to get acclimated sort of situation. Remember, the offense they're going to be running, Nathaniel Hackett's over there, right? So this is going to be a lot more familiar for Rodgers. And I think other people are going to have to adjust around him. And I think that'll be just fine. So I can see them getting off to a hot start. And then here's the thing, they win that division. That's a really good division, right? So I think that gives Rodgers a real nice opportunity. So those ones I like. Are there any big long shots that you guys would sprinkle a little bit on?
None really jump out to me. I tried to find a spicy hot take near the bottom of the list, but none jumped out.
Nothing better than Sam Darnold, to be honest.
It's honestly, I know you're half kidding, but it is the long shot bet. If you're going to make it, you might as well make it. I mean, he might be the best thrower of the football in San Francisco 49ers history per multiple reports. I don't know if you saw that, but
He might be the only thrower of the football in San Francisco 49ers history per multiple reports. Arjun, any long shots you like?
No, honestly, I mean, I think we covered the ones I like the most on in the not non-long shot ones.
Offensive player of the year. The leader at the top, two leaders at the top, three, actually, I should say, both 10-1, all three 10-1. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Christian McCaffrey. Austin Eckler, 15-1, your boy, AJ. Stephon Diggs and Jonathan Taylor, Devontae Adams, and Cooper Kupp. Tyreek Hill, Deebo Samuel, and Derrick Henry are all 20-1. Lamar Jackson, 22-1, which is kind of interesting because he's the only quarterback that's on this list. Saquon Barkley, 22-1 as well. Sorry, Jalen Hurts also a quarterback, obviously is on this list. But the quarterback's down way farther down because they're obviously more likely to win MVP than offensive player of the years. That traditionally goes to a non-QB. Some other non-QBs that are noteworthy here. Amon-Ra St. Brown is 25-1. Travis Kelce, 25-1. Garrett Wilson, 25-1. And my guy, Breece Hall, is 35-1. I'll start with you, Brad.
Did you mention CeeDee Lamb?
I might not have.
I'm looking at like a consensus site because, of course, I'm in New York and they don't have. But
Yeah.
so I don't want to give a bad line. But if it says 60-1 on this site, which I'm guessing is not the price at DraftKings, but
He is 50-1 at DraftKings.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Well, and that is certainly my bet then
That's
for
the
sure.
bet.
So I liked him a lot last year. I think we had a graphic go out. You know, they polled the analysts at PFF, and I threw him in the ring. Look, again, Dak Prescott missed 5 games, and CD still had a monster season, made his first Pro Bowl. You're going to get the Dallas narrative, the big market, all those things. Yes, they improved the people around him, but I honestly think they improved the people around him enough to where he still is going to get a million targets, be very productive, but not lose target share or lose opportunities. Just frankly, as defenses less keyed in on him and get better, less great matchups. But I love here though too is he's going to play in the slot. We know now with Gallup and Brandon Cooks, they're going to keep him where he is. He's going to get safety. He's going to get linebackers. He's going to get nickel primary corners. Again, it's a high-powered offense that, the defense is so good. Maybe they play in some low-scoring games, which is a bit of a risk. But yeah, I'm clearly buying all things Cowboys, and 50-1 is crazy. If Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I do love as well in this market, is half the price, then I'll take CeeDee Lamb all day long.
Yeah, I'm shocked at that 50-1 line. I thought that'd be closer to like 25-1 or something. I'm gonna go with Garrett Wilson. I thought Wilson had a great year last year, ranked 9th in PFF receiving grade. He ranked 14th in total receiving yards, despite playing with Zach Wilson, Mike White, Joe Flacco. Like, he had a great year last year as a rookie. Now he gets Aaron Rodgers, a rejuvenated Aaron Rodgers, and I think more importantly, Nathaniel Hackett, being Rodgers' offensive coordinator, in the 2 years that, or in 2020 and 2021, when Hackett was Aaron Rodgers' offensive coordinator in Green Bay, the Packers did throw the ball about 2%, 3% more than expected. So they're not, I don't think Hackett's going to come in and try to impose the run in New York. I think they will try to throw it often and early. Garrett Wilson is the type of guy, he is the alpha wide receiver 1 in the New York Jets receiving room. Look at what Devontae did in his years with Aaron Rodgers in New York. I mean, in 2021, about 1,500 receiving yards, 11 touchdowns. In 2020, 18 receiving touchdowns. And one of the things I think Wilson was good at last year, but just didn't get a chance because of the bad quarterback play, was, use his abilities in the red zone. And I think that was something that we saw a little bit here and there. But when Rodgers, he forms a connection with Wilson, I think that could be a very, very scary duo. And, I think they are playing in a tough division. They are playing in an overall tough conference. So it's not like they're going to just be able to run the ball out to win games. I think they're going to have to be able to throw. And I think because Wilson kind of fills that Devontae Adams role in Nathaniel Hackett's offense, I think there should be a lot of volume there. And, Devontae ranked top 5 in receiving yards and touchdowns in the 2 years he had Hackett and Rodgers. And I think Garrett Wilson could step into that role. So I like that price at 25-1. And I think Wilson could have a leap over what he produces rookie year.
Yeah, I like both those. The CeeDee Lamb one is probably my favorite bet that I've seen on the board. So hopefully, if you're listening, you're able to grab that before the price changes, because I can't imagine. I'll throw one other one that is similar to that, which is AJ Brown. Now that he's also 50 to 1. The worry with him is he's a lot more likely to miss some snaps. He's got a lot of other players on that team that are going to get a lot of love for any big year that he has. But remember, there's also the narrative that he kind of came in and turned that offense around to a certain extent. So I do think he'll get a lion's share of the credit if he has a huge year as well. And I like the matchups that he's going to have against all of those teams in the NFC East as well. CeeDee Lamb, phenomenal, as we talked about. I'll throw one other that I like out here. By the way, it's hilarious. Like DeAndre Hopkins is 40 to 1. Trey Lance is 45 to 1. Relative to CeeDee Lamb, that's just absolutely amazing. But I do like Tyreek Hill at 20 to 1, closer to one of the favorites. I just, if Tua wasn't healthy for so much of last year, if he's a little bit more healthy when he's out there, I mean, he's just feeding Tyreek Hill. He's just pumping him the ball left and right. And that's going to result in a massive, massive stat line. He was on pace halfway through the year last year. I think he was in the MVP running with the type of numbers that he was putting up, and ended up, I think, our second or third highest graded receiver, maybe even first actually last year. Don't call me on that. But 20 to 1, I like that. I like that number for Tyreek. Let's go to DPOY. Favorite here is Myles Garrett and Mike Parsons, both 750. TJ Watt is plus 850. Nick Bosa 10 to 1. Ahmad Sauce Gardner, the Riz King himself, 14 to 1. Max Crosby 15 to 1. Hassan Reddick is 20 to 1. Aaron Donald 25 to 1. Brian Burns also 25 to 1. Aiden Hutchinson, Quinn Williams 30 to 1. Chris Jones 35, along with Roquan Smith, formerly of Brad's Chicago Bears. Fred Warner, Pat Surtain, both 40 to 1. And then you've got Joey Bosa, Rashawn Gary at 45, before you get to the 50s, which is Chase Young and Matt Judon. Start with you, Brad.
Yep. So another long shot that I love here. I'm seeing 80 to 1 for Jalen Phillips, the edge rusher of the Miami Dolphins. Had a 90 pass rush grade last year, 70 total pressures. His 20% pass rush win rate was top 10 among edge defenders. His 16% pressure percentage was top 10 as well. You go to Miami defense and now has Vic Fangio that is going to have these guys teeing off. They bring in Bradley Chubb, who I think is clearly inferior to Jalen Phillips. You have Christian Wilkins. You have a lot of other bodies in that defense. But I think Phillips is the man for this job. And I think that he has less odds than Christian Wilkins and Bradley Chubb for some reason. I think even Javon Holland, the safety, great player, has shorter odds than Jalen Phillips as well. So former first-round pick. I also love that we have all the great underlying metrics, like I just mentioned, but only had 9 sacks last year. So if he has, some better sack regression, has like 15, 16 sacks, it came out of nowhere. He was a 9 sack guy last year. Like, no, it didn't come out of nowhere. Sacks were a fluky, noisy stat. I love him at 80 to 1.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What about you, Arjun?
Yeah, so Phillips is actually 100 to 1 on DraftKings, so a little bit of a better price. And I really like that one. I didn't even notice that one, but I'm all in on the Dolphins defense. I think the one thing I want to say real quick is I haven't been betting like too long. It doesn't make sense to really be betting like a secondary player. It seems a little bit tough for secondary players to get the award. I mean, in the last 10 years, Stephon Gilmore is the only corner / safety to receive DPOY. And just what we know about coverage, like it's so fluky year over year. So if you're betting on someone like Sauce Gardner or Pat Surtain, they're great cornerbacks, but they're also subject to volatility at the position. And they say they have like a hamstring injury they suffer early in the year. Like that's something that can hinder their performance. It would hinder any player's performance, but I think secondary more importantly. And honestly, the long shots of DPOY don't really excite me. I think honestly, just betting Myles Garrett does seem like the best option in my opinion. I think you look at the Browns, they upgraded the interior with Dalvin Tomlinson, got Obo Okoronkwo from the Houston Texans. So it's not like Garrett shouldn't be seeing the double teams he sees as often. Jim Schwartz, I think, is a great defensive mind. I think he'll put Garrett in positions to succeed, ISO him in one-on-one situations. And, Garrett, I think last year, for what it was worth, I think he was one of the best edge players at his position, like he is normally. But I think now that he has more help around him, he'll be able to produce. And 73 pressures last year, ranked 5th. 93.5 PFF pass rushing grade, ranked first among all edge players. I think this is the year he'll finally put it all together. One tremendous season, and I think he will be rewarded for it, because I think the Browns will be better than we expect, and so he'll get a lot more recognition than I think he would have in years prior.
Yeah, he should have been. I mean, he was right up there last year. I remember talking to Sam Monson about who to put in the slot there for the All Pro voting, and we were looking and comparing Bosa, Parsons, and Garrett, and I mean Garrett just had a phenomenal year. I mean, absolutely phenomenal year, and I think relative to those other guys, did not get anywhere near the type of publicity. So even he will feel like a little bit of coming out of nowhere. So I like that quite a bit. I don't love the board here. I really like the angle that Brad has. Looking at some value, I mean, Aaron Donald at 25-1 is a slap in the face, to be perfectly honest. I think the narrative will be tough because that team is going to suck in all likelihood. But here's the thing. That team will suck. They're also still playing in LA, so they're going to get some time. It's still going to get some TV love. The fact that the matter is, I don't think Aaron Donald is coming back to play and just kind of half-ass it. The guy's an absolute monster. He's playing in a division where you look at the quarterbacks that could be playing in that division. I mean, it's like it could be the worst division of quarterbacks that are out there, and that means that he's just going to have a field day. Sacking Colt McCoy and Sam Darnold and Geno Smith over there. So I like Aaron Donald at 25-1. Aaron Darnold. That might be his last time, but it's at the time the season ends. But I like him at 25-1. Your point, Arjun, is so good about the corners and secondary players. I mean, even more than a corner, a non-corner secondary player. Like, I love Derwin James. The guy will have to have a season you've never seen from a safety to get defensive player of the year. And how many interceptions did Stephon Gilmore have when he won? He had like 10, 12 interceptions, something like that?
It's at least like 8, I think.
Yeah, at least 8.
Yeah. So, and we just know, that's such a fluky stat. So I do like that one. Okay, let's move on to, we'll mention this briefly. So comeback player of the year. Damar Hamlin is minus 650. I think the idea here, we were just talking about this before, is if he just plays a snap, maybe even if he is on the roster, this is like a lock. But let's just, for the sake of it, look at the odds here, because everyone else is 25-1. That's Tua, Russell Wilson, Trey Lance, Lamar Jackson, Jimmy G, Cooper Kupp, and then Baker Mayfield is 30-1. I'm not exactly sure what Baker's coming back from, but being bad. Most improved.
That's what's Russ coming back from?
Yeah.
Poor guy made 80 million. Like, oh, it's poor SOB.
Yeah, exactly. So if kind of aside from the Damar Hamlin thing, like let's say that he doesn't play at all this year. Any of these that you guys like?
Especially one I really like. You didn't mention. Again, I'm looking at like a consensus site that has 25-1 for Chase Young. I don't know what it is at DraftKings, but I actually really like this play. In particular, I love it now that he had his option. Yeah. Now that he has option declined, I like it way more. If he didn't, I probably wouldn't like it as much. So he's going into a contract year, former number 2 overall pick. I don't need to give you all the narratives, but look, whenever he does play, he grades in the 80s for us across the board as a pass rusher, as a run defender. You again get all these phenomenal players across this defensive line, maybe the best defensive line in football, that can give him a lot of cleanup pressures and cleanup sacks and boost those traditional stats for him. But yeah, I mean, a guy that, look, we all had all the buzz in the world, number 2 overall pick, and just hasn't been able to get out there. Played about 150 snaps last year, but again, if he comes out, if they sneak in the playoffs somehow with Sam Howell and he has 10 sacks, I love the value on Chase Young.
Solid. AJ, anything that you like here?
Sticking on my Jags bandwagon, Calvin Ridley at 35-1. I don't know if he's going to get as much of a narrative in the right way as I want for this bet. But I mean, we saw Geno last year. I mean, just step in, become one of the better quarterbacks in the league, and like the narrative on him was he was just like they wrote him off and he didn't write back, right? And like with Ridley, it's just like he didn't play last year, and if he steps in and is a top 5 receiver when he comes back playing with the top 6 or 7 quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, like he's going to put up numbers. And I think if he puts up numbers, he, plays a full season, I think he should be in contention for this award. And again, like I just think he's that good of a talent to where if he turns it around, like people will forget about his 2021 season where he was injured, about 2022 when he was, suspended. So I think there's a little bit of value there, but yeah, this is a tough one to bet just because of DeMar Hamlin's situation.
Zach Wilson is 80 to 1. I can't even imagine the script that would have to be written to see that one happen. The only one that I kind of like here is Von Miller at 60 to 1. But you're definitely betting the long shot here if you go with it. All right, let's wrap up with Coach of the Year. Interesting set here. Dan Campbell is plus 850. Sean Payton 9 to 1. Robert Salah 12 to 1, as well as Matt Eberflus, Frank Reich 18 to 1. D'Amico Ryans 20 to 1. Zach Taylor, Shane Steichen, Mike Tomlin, Mike McDaniel, Kevin Stefanski, Doug Peterson, and Dennis Allen are all 22 to 1. LaFleur, Carroll, Staley, Belichick, Arthur Smith 25 to 1. Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, John Harbaugh 30 to 1. And I'll just stop reading there and let Brad, you tell us what you like best.
Yeah, I like Steichen there at 22 to 1. I think the narrative of, let's say they do play Anthony Richardson right away. We opened the show talking about Bryce Young. There had been some rumblings that some people in that building do kind of want to throw him into the fire and let him start right away. It's funny, like their team was so bad last year, literally dead last in EPA per play, had a lot of issues. Their offensive line in particular, which is one of the most expensive in the NFL, was terrible. But you have a Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, you add in Josh Downs. You have an offensive line that maybe they get healthy or just play better or have a quarterback they want to, go fight for. And then you could bring in Shane Steichen. I think if they somehow find a way to get a wild card, or I don't know, the Jaguars have troubles and they somehow win that terrible AFC South, maybe Steichen is the way to bet that at 22 to 1.
Arjun, what do you think?
I like Mike McDaniel at 22 to 1. I think, I do wish in hindsight I maybe bet this instead of Dolphins to win the AFC East. Because I think like it is going to be a tough division. You probably have to win 11 or 12 games to, win out in this division. And if you look at it from that angle, I mean, Mike McDaniel is kind of the architect of this whole offense. I mean, people don't really seem to be giving Tua the credit as much as, it's Mike McDaniel putting Tua in the right situations to succeed, getting, scheming Tyreek and Waddle open. And I think, he will get most of the credit, and they added a change to the offense this year. So I think McDaniel at 22 to 1 is a good bet. And if they do win the AFC East, I think there's a high likelihood that he ends up winning the Coach of the Year award as well.
Yeah, McDaniel, I was the same page as you there. I just think it's all about who's going to get the credit if a team that's not favored to win the division wins, right? I think that's kind of the way that I sort of think about this. So there are a couple here. The other one that sticks out to me, where it's probably not going to be as much the quarterback, but more the architect of the teams, the term you used, is Pete Carroll. And I think Pete Carroll deserved some recognition last year for what he did. And I could see this year it being that much better, but people kind of lumping in what he's done over the past 2 years into this award, right? The fact that I think getting some credit for getting rid of Russell Wilson and building this team with young players. The division sucks, right? The best team in the division doesn't have a quarterback that anyone would want ever. So like the opportunity is wide open. Drafted some players that I think we could see making a contribution right away. And so I think Carroll would get credit there because he kind of made those big moves. He trusted in Geno Smith, and the narrative around the Seahawks is that Pete Carroll builds a culture that drives that team forward. So I like it at 25 to 1. I hate all the favorites. Like Dan Campbell at 850 to 1, I cannot stand. I would rather bet Kevin O'Connell at 35 to 1, frankly, than Dan Campbell at plus 850. Sean Payton, I mean, what are they going to have to do? I mean, even if there's improvement, there's no shot they win the division. So I don't like any of those favorites.
Yeah, the Peyton one, I get the narrative, like, oh, if he fixes Russ, but just like, what would hell, like you said, like they would have to win the AFC West, but which they're just not going to do.
But fixing Russ, it's like we've already seen Russ be a top 5 quarterback before,
right?
Like, it's like I don't know, it's super bad. Like if you can make Russ be less corny, then yeah, You give him the
Then
give
you
him the award,
deserve, yeah, like an Emmy or like a Tony or something. It's a whole separate category.
a Nobel Peace Prize, I believe, is what he would deserve if he made that happen. Yeah, some other ones that are long shots here, like Vrabel 35-1, Josh McDaniels 35-1 as well. I like O'Connell a lot more than all of those. Dable 35-1, Todd Bowles 40-1, Mike McCarthy 40-1, Andy Reid is 50-1. The Andy Reid one is interesting because like he probably doesn't belong at 50-1 because of he's going to do a great job coaching, but like what would Andy Reid have to do to win Coach of the Year?
I think he might have to win like 17 games. Like he
Yeah,
might have to like go
go
17-0. Yeah.
I think the only other way is if, let's say that Mahomes gets hurt and like they go with Chad Henne and like still win the division, then I think feel like, oh my God, we forgot about how good Andy Reid is. Like we gotta give him the
Yeah,
award.
they'd have to experience some serious adversity for him to be even in the running.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So anyways, any others before we close out that we did not hit on that you guys like?
No, I just want to, the irony of if Arjun cashes on a bet on a guy who is only coming back because he placed a bet is just, I mean, hey, you can't write a better story. So maybe that's why it's a good bet.
Yeah. And I think, it wasn't as heinous maybe as like, it initially felt to people. So I could see that. But yeah, that would be an interesting look. That'd be great. I think we deserve it. All right. That was our show. We'll be back with you on Wednesday evening as we usually do, Sundays and Wednesdays. In the meantime, enjoy the Printing Press Discord. If you're looking for the link, it's in the description, and you can holler at us on Twitter as well. Have a wonderful week. Love y'all. Peace.